Additionally, these chat rooms where these people are based are protected by a law that claims that they're hosting sites, and therefore people can hide behind screen names. So it's very difficult to identify who the bullier and harasser is.
When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, bullies were such a dominant theme in the movies. They were the archetypal villain in so many of the films that went on to become cult classics and nostalgic favorites. All the great 80s movies featured bullies, who picked on and tortured the poor protagonist, until that character mustered up the courage and drive to find some way to take a stand, defy the oppressive social hierarchy, and face their foe. Sometimes it meant actual physical confrontation with the bully, whether by way of a perfectly aimed crane kick to Johnny's nose, or just a snow-covered fit of rage against a yellow-eyed monster who pushed you too far. Believe it or not, movies in the 80s did in fact encourage certain levels of violence against teenage tyranny. Or maybe the bully could be bested on the sporting field, or through clever scheming and planning, or maybe even through the assistance of your new buddy the Luck Dragon. Whatever the case may have been, the takeaway lesson from seemingly every bully-themed 80s movie was that you had to find a way to stick up for yourself. You had to train, like wax on and wax off, or you had to buck up and face your fear, some way, somehow. There was always something that the main character had to do to deal with their bully problem. But then, by the time my generation was having kids of their own, somehow the social narrative on bullying had taken a huge change.
All this week, we're reporting in depth on the epidemic of bullying in America and efforts to stop it. Next week, a special episode of Sesame Street will address the bullying issue. Take a look.
Good birds do not have huge feet like that.
Oh, but I really want to join the club.
Sorry, we can't include you in the Good Birds Club with feet like that. Right? Good Birds Club? Right.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, so long, Bigfoot.
That's Big Bird.
Right.
Poor Big Bird. Joining us now, Rosemary Trulio, Vice President of Education and Research for Sesame Workshop, along with maybe the most famous Sesame Street character of all time, Big Bird, certainly the tallest, and his new friend now, Blue Jay, who is now a friend despite what you saw in that clip.
That's
Big
true.
Bird, Big Bird, how did it make you
Jay.
feel? How did it make you feel when Pigeon was mean to you and said you couldn't be in the club?
Oh, it wasn't very nice. It made me feel bad. I just wanted to be part of the club.
And so what
I
did you
just
do?
wanted them to like me.
I know. And what did you do then?
Well, Elmo and Abby saw that I was in trouble, so they went and got an adult.
Oh, yes, because an adult needs to be brought in when something like this happens. And Blue Jay, why did you go along with Pigeon? Pigeon was not being nice.
No.
And you were very quick to side against your friend Big Bird. Why did you do that?
I wanted Big Bird to join the club, but I was afraid that if I said something, I might get kicked out of the club, or maybe I'd be bullied. I didn't know what else to do.
I know. All right, so this is a classic
Okay,
example. This is a classic example of how good kids can side with the bully and hurt someone's feelings. Why is it important for Sesame Street to do a special episode on this?
Because Sesame Street has always dealt with a range of societal issues, and to lay those foundational skills, because we know that we need to start early if we want to prevent bullying from happening. And children need to know the strategies for how to cope with bullying.
Big Bird said to bring in an adult. That's important, I think. But sometimes adults don't get it, too. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes adults say, oh, there's always been bullying in schools. You got to be tougher. Right. And sometimes kids who have been bullied then turn around, and when the tables turn, they become bullies themselves, too.
Right. And absolutely, parents want to do the right thing, but they may not have the strategies. So what we've done is we have this anti-bullying campaign, starting with this episode which airs on Monday, but also go to our website, sesamestreet.org/bullying, because we have activities and tips and 5-part panel discussion so parents could get more information about how they could address bullying if it is occurring with their children. Topics.
Yeah, I learned that I should be a reporter.
You
should. Yeah, like you. If I see something, I should go tell an adult. It's not tattling.
That's absolutely
That's
right.
right.
It's
Right.
just reporting the facts. You
That's
also
right.
should be friends with all of your friends.
I would
right?
like
That's
to be
right.
friends with everybody.
And everybody is different. That's
I
the
be
other
your
thing.
friend?
You can definitely be my
Can
friend.
I come over
Lucia.
for dinner?
What do you like to eat?
I like suet.
Suet.
Yeah.
I was going to say worms,
does.
but
He
I'm
loves
not sure.
I love
Big
suet.
Bird, if you ever see somebody in trouble, you'll be a peacemaker, won't you, Big Bird? If you
Oh,
see someone
yes.
get
I'd
picked
like to
on,
help. I always like to help. And I want everybody to be happy, like we said. Happy to be me.
And it's
fun if
important for
everybody
children,
feels that
if
way.
they do see bullying, to actually go to an adult, a trusted adult, to get help.
And sometimes, Rosemary, I think that I don't know if it's school. There's so many things that schools have to do. They have to teach kids how to read, how to write. They have to have control of the classroom, control of the playground. Of fighting bullying or at least blunting the effects of bullying takes so many different things. This is just one piece of all of that.
Exactly. I know there's a lot, but teachers need to be more vigilant about what's going on in the classroom, but to listen to children, because it takes a lot of courage for a child to actually come to a teacher and to explain what's been happening. So for the teachers to actually listen, and they need to intervene.
When you look at it all now, you really do have to give them credit for this diabolically genius work of social engineering. In a single generation, in the wake of 9/11 fueled terrorism fears and an ever-suffocating atmosphere of political correctness, now the message on dealing with bullies is that we need the quote grown-ups to make everyone be nice. We need a culture-wide campaign of education and realignment to simply eliminate bullying from the human experience. And thankfully, government is willing to lead the way. And so now people really are turning to Big Brother to protect them from all those terrible bullies out there. But not only is Big Brother watching out for you, protecting you from the bullies, Big Brother is kind enough to educate you as to who the bullies in your world really are. The bullies are hiding in caves in Afghanistan. The bullies are drinking vodka in Moscow. The bullies are building nukes in Pyongyang. Heck, there's even a whole rogue terrorist nation of bullies ravaging the Middle East, conspicuously well-funded and enjoying a windfall of leftover American military equipment. But wait, there's also bullies within our own borders, amongst our own citizenry too. Are you a bully? Are you oppressing others because of, say, their sexual orientation or their gender identity? Or worse, are you one of these nefarious online bullies who are ruining the lives of innocent people by spreading these despicable conspiracy theories? If you are, well then maybe you deserve a well-placed karate kick to the nose. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Maybe you need to be dealt with by our beloved Big Bro. I apologize for the sarcasm, but speaking of Orwellian themes, the more we stand and watch things developing at such a rapid pace, the harder it is for me to deny that Orwell's concept of newspeak, the establishment's control over the thought processes of the citizenry through control of the language itself, isn't indeed being accomplished right before our eyes, through the Twitterization of the brains of the upcoming generations. In the name of expediency, people have succumbed to a mentality whereby they are increasingly incapable of complex thought, nuanced dialogue, true critical thinking. Instead of reading articles anymore, they read headlines. Headlines are summarized into simple concepts represented by a single coined term. Operation #brainwashing is in full swing. This is the real-time, real-world application of newspeak. A month ago, the term fake news was merely a combination of two words in the English language, which simply carried their own intrinsic definitions to be elaborated upon by whatever the broader linguistic context in which they might be found. But today, they're a bona fide word weapon of Orwellian-style propaganda. A single hashtagged term endowed with a heavy dose of doublethink, with the ultimate aim of curbing something called free speech, another term which, once upon a time, seemed to hold a much greater degree of sacredness within our society than it seems to today. But really, if you don't see that this newest projectile in the hashtag Newspeak arsenal isn't being deployed in a blitzkrieg fashion, then honestly I'd say you're hashtag out to lunch. Not only have we now seen the blatant false flag shooter going into Comet Ping Pong on Sunday, in lockstep with the whole script, continuing the entire censorship agenda against online conspiracy bullying, but it's popping up everywhere. Trump's national security advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and Flynn's son, are being slapped with accusations of pushing fake news and be conspiracy theorist bullies against poor old Hillary. And then, in what seemed to me like a very bizarre piece, the New York Times wrote this article about a recent tragedy involving cheerleaders in a car crash in the tiny town of Ira-Ann, Texas. Even the spelling and pronunciation is weird, I admit. But the weirdest part is that the New York Times reporter who wrote this story was already in the small town a week before to do a piece on the undefeated high school football team. I mean, doesn't that seem like something that the New York Times would fly somebody out there for? And so he happened to be in town when the crash occurred. But he starts off his story talking about how almost a year ago, the town was the center of a so-called viral fake news story, and was the center of this conspiracy theory about how the whole town was actually fake and just a cover for some secret underground installation. So, cheerleaders are dead from a car crash, but he feels the need to begin his article talking about a fake news story in a connection to the town from almost a year ago, and mentioning it several times throughout the article. And on top of that, the article is very lengthy and then gives an uncommon amount of detail about the crash and how the victims were discovered, and you definitely just got to go check it out. The whole thing is just very strange, and obviously it's hard to not conclude that whether that really happened or whether it was all made up. Either way, they're not wasting the opportunity to push the whole fake news meme again. Every day it gets harder to distinguish the fake real news from the real fake news. So what do we do? How do you fight the bully who bullies you by flipping it around and making you the bully, simply because you object to monopolized media, you object to oligarchy, and object to lies and corruption and outright evil? Well, I'd say that you stop and remember that the real enemy, the real adversary, is twofold: death and the devil. And both have already been defeated. Both have already been faced and dealt with. Jesus already destroyed the only oppressor that truly had any eternal significance. That war is already won. The only question is really about whether you're fighting the right fight. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, bullies were such a dominant theme in the movies. They were the archetypal villain in so many of the films against the yellow-eyed monster who pushed you too far. Believe it or not, movies in the 80s did in fact encourage certain levels of violence against teenage tyranny. Or maybe the bully could be bested on the sporting field, or through clever scheming and planning, or maybe even through the assistance of your new buddy the Luck Dragon. Whatever the case may have been, the takeaway lesson from seemingly every bully-themed 80s movie was that you had to find a way that went on to become cult classics and nostalgic favorites. All the great 80s movies featured bullies, who picked on and tortured the poor protagonist, until that character mustered up the courage and drive to find some way to take a stand, defy the oppressive social hierarchy, and face their foe. Sometimes it meant actual physical confrontation with the bully, whether by way of a perfectly aimed crane kick to Johnny's nose, or just a snow-covered fit of rage.
Additionally, these chat rooms where these people are based are protected by a law that claims that they're hosting sites, and therefore people can hide behind screen names. So it's very difficult to identify who the bullier and harasser is.
Stick up for yourself. You had to train, like wax on and wax off, or you had to buck up and face your fear some way, somehow. There was always something that the main character had to do to deal with their bully problem. But then, by the time my generation was having kids of their own, somehow the social narrative on bullying had taken a huge change.